Nobody owns Rolex. Not a family, not a conglomerate, not a single billionaire. The most valuable watch brand on earth is the legal property of a charitable foundation in Geneva. And by the terms of its own founding documents, it cannot be sold to anyone at any price ever. That arrangement traces back to a single, very specific tragedy. Hans Wilsdorf's wife, Florence, his business partner in everything but title, died in 1944 without either of them having children. With no heir to hand the company to, Wilsdorf spent the next year setting up the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a Swiss Stiftung, a legal structure that has no shareholders and no members at all. Its assets don't belong to any person or investor. Under Swiss law, they belong permanently to the purpose written into its founding charter, which Wilsdorf drafted to do exactly two things: keep Rolex running as an independent watchmaker and funnel its profits into charitable causes in and around Geneva. When Wilsdorf died in 1960, his remaining ownership stake transferred in full to the foundation, and it has sat there, untouched, for 66 years since. There is no Rolex stock to buy. There is no founding family with a controlling stake to negotiate with. The foundation reportedly distributes somewhere between 100 and 150 million Swiss francs a year to charitable projects, and Rolex itself still pays ordinary Swiss corporate tax like any other business, none of which makes it a non-profit in any meaningful sense. It's simply a company that legally cannot be acquired, not by a rival, not by a private equity firm, not by another billionaire looking to build a luxury empire. Every other major watch name in the world sits inside a conglomerate. Tag Heuer, Hublot, and Zenith belong to LVMH. Cartier, IWC, and Panerai belong to Richemont. Omega, Longines, and Tissot belong to the Swatch Group. Rolex belongs to a deed. That structure appears to be an extraordinary competitive advantage rather than a quirky footnote. In 2025, Rolex crossed 11.0 billion Swiss francs in estimated wholesale sales, roughly $14 billion, the first time the brand has ever cleared that threshold, according to the closely watched Morgan Stanley and Lux Consult industry report. What makes that number strange is that Rolex actually sold fewer watches to get there. Physical production fell about 2% that year, the second consecutive annual decline, something the brand hadn't done in over 2 decades before this stretch. Fewer watches, more revenue, driven by average selling prices that have climbed roughly 50% since 2019. Rolex now accounts for close to 33% of the entire Swiss watch industry's value on its own, and over 34% once its sister brand Tudor is included, effectively functioning as an industry within the industry. At the retail level, analysts peg Rolex's sales at around 16 billion Swiss francs, or roughly $20.6 billion. A figure the same Morgan Stanley report notes now exceeds Apple Watch's global retail revenue. Rolex, alongside just 3 other privately held brands, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Richard Mille, now captures an estimated 76% of the entire Swiss watch industry's operating profit, while the roughly 450 other registered Swiss watch brands compete for what's left of a market that has contracted for 2 straight years, with total export volumes now sitting at less than half their 2011 peak. Rolex has been building toward this kind of control over its own supply chain for decades, well beyond just cutting production numbers. The company owns and operates its own gold foundry, smelting its own alloys in-house rather than buying finished gold from outside suppliers, a level of vertical integration almost no other watch brand, let alone jewelry brand, bothers to replicate. It manufactures its own movements, cases, bracelets, and dials rather than outsourcing components the way most of the industry does. The one piece of the chain it never fully controlled was the final sale, the moment a watch actually reaches a customer's wrist, which for a century had been handled by a network of independent authorized dealers. That changed in August 2023, when Rolex announced it was acquiring Bucherer, its single largest retail partner, a company with more than 100 stores worldwide and roots in a partnership with Rolex going back to 1924. The trigger wasn't financial distress. Bucherer's 87-year-old chairman, Jörg Bucherer, had no direct descendants to hand the business to and was weighing a sale. And Rolex, rather than risk its biggest single retail relationship, responsible for around 8% of Rolex's total revenue, landing with a competitor or a private equity buyer, simply bought the company itself. Terms were never officially disclosed, though industry estimates put the deal at roughly 3 billion Swiss francs. True to form, Bucherer kept its own name and its own management team. The acquisition barely looked like one from the outside. What made the timing especially pointed was that Bucherer had already been named just months earlier in early 2023 as the launch partner for Rolex's brand new certified pre-owned program, the first time in the company's history that Rolex had officially entered the market for its own used watches, a resale economy that outside dealers and flippers had been profiting from for years precisely because Rolex made too few watches to satisfy demand at retail. Line all of it up, and the strategy stops looking like a series of separate decisions and starts looking like one continuous idea, repeated at every layer of the business. Control the gold before it becomes a watch. Control the assembly before it reaches a dealer. Control the dealer before the watch reaches a customer. And once customers started reselling that scarcity back to each other for a profit, Rolex itself wasn't collecting. Buy a way into that market too. Every other luxury house on earth answers to a stock price, a founding family's expectations, or a private equity firm's exit timeline. Rolex answers to a foundation charter written by a widower in 1945, and the only shareholder that arrangement was ever designed to satisfy no longer needs anything from the company at all.